Hello and welcome to State of the Union. I'm Stefan Gробbe in Brussels. The recent gains of the far right in regional elections in East Germany continue to make waves this week. Not that anything productive came out of the ranks of the AfD party, the Alternative for Germany. It was rather the centre-left coalition of Chancellor Olaf Scholz trying to seize back the initiative. In an attempt to further crack down on illegal immigration, Germany is now tightening controls at its borders, undermining, at least for 6 months, the Schengen system, Europe's visa-free area of unrestricted movement. This in reaction to a 33% rise in illegal border crossings, according to the latest official numbers.
Wir werden daher unsere temporären Binnengrenzkontrollen auf alle deutschen Landgrenzen ausweiten. Das dient der weiteren Begrenzung der irregulären Migration und das dient dem Schutz vor den akuten Gefahren durch den islamistischen Terror und durch schwere Kriminalität.
With this move, Berlin hopes to win back voters in the next regional election in East Germany a week from now. Meanwhile, the latest row between the EU Commission and Hungary over immigration is about to escalate. Budapest vowed to retaliation for a €200 million fine imposed by the European Court of Justice over Hungary's treatment of asylum seekers.
Az Európai Unió, Brüsszel arra akarja kényszeríteni Magyarországot. Az európai eljárásrend lefolytatása után felajánlja ezeknek az illegális migránsoknak, hogy önkéntesen, ingyenesen, egy útra, akkor Brüsszelbe szállítjuk őket. Ha Brüsszel illegális migránsokat akar, akkor Brüsszel ezt megkaphatja.
Budapest's threat triggered sharp criticism from Belgium and the EU Commission. No bus transfer has taken place yet, and that might never happen at all. Yet, the recent sharp focus on immigration shows how the rise of populism in elections in Europe throughout the year is influencing the political debate. Speaking of debate, in the United States, where far-right populism is making another run at the presidency, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris faced off in what was probably their only televised debate. Polls taken immediately afterwards saw Harris as the clear winner, but the race remains tight. A race both campaigns have claimed is all-important for the survival of democracy. Joining me now is Ben Ansell, political scientist at the University of Oxford, host of the podcast What's Wrong with Democracy and author of Why Politics Fails. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Stefan.
So, is democracy in decline, and do the elections of 2024 so far reflect that?
This year, 4 billion people went to the polls to vote, half of them in countries with free and fair elections. And for the most part, the results of those elections should encourage us. So, for example, in Turkey, Erdogan has not succeeded in controlling some of the local cities. So he's sort of on the defense. Narendra Modi, again, a fair and free election, but one that people thought he was going to dominate and strengthen. He did worse than expected. Last year, PIS in Poland finally lost. So actually, in lots of places where we were concerned that democracy might be weakening, it hasn't.
Let's focus on the U.S. presidential elections being just around the corner. Are identity politics something typically American, and misinformation tearing democracy apart?
The kind of identity politics that is used in misinformation that people get excited about has always been with us, right? People have always voted by their demographics. You know, what we're seeing in the US election with Hispanic and African American voting looks pretty similar to 2008. Maybe also to the 1990s, right? So the fact that people vote their identities is nothing new in American politics. What's new maybe is the polarization in the media around that.
There has been a special focus this year on first-time voters in the US. What can we expect from them in the presidential elections?
Kamala Harris has a lead among younger Americans, and that's where she's really changed the narrative from Joe Biden. Biden actually did very well, maybe not surprisingly, among senior citizens in America, cut into Trump's edge there. But he lost a lot of young voters concerned about Gaza, yes, but also concerned about inflation, concerned about the housing market, and concerned about voting for somebody in their 80s. And so I suspect that we will see many more young people out to vote than we would have done with Biden and then in most recent elections.
There's also a growing gender divide when it comes to voting, women voting differently than men. How do you explain this?
It's always been true that women and men have voted differently. But what is new about today is that the gender gap is just enormous, right? So right now, it looks like there's a 20-point gender gap. So if you like, Harris is sort of plus 10 with men and with women, and Trump is plus 10 with men. So that's a huge difference. Now, women turn out to vote more. So actually, that's an inbuilt advantage for Kamala Harris. Why is that happening more this election? Maybe because of having a woman on the ballot. I think more likely because of abortion.
All right, Ben Ansel, professor at the University of Oxford. Thanks for helping us understand this complex issue. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
One issue that voters are particularly interested in is, according to polls, climate change. The reason is that more and more people experience firsthand extreme weather events or other phenomena like sinkholes. Most recently, an area in central Turkey is troubled by the proliferation of sinkholes, up to more than 2,600. What caused most of them is drought and uncontrolled use of underground water, typical consequences of climate change. Turkish emergency management authorities are closely monitoring the development of the giant holes, looking for ways to prevent their formation. Now, if you feel the ground beneath you is going away, don't panic. The collapse process is usually so gradual that you can leave the affected area safely. That's it for this edition. I'm Stefan Gробе. Thank you for watching. Have an excellent week.